Welcome to another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. Grab your popcorn, grab your drink, your tablet, your notepad, the kids, Auntie Nenen, Granny. Call everybody, pull up your chair, fasten your seatbelt. We'll be right back. Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode. So I did a little digging on Project Polaris and we have a little update. A project sponsor, as Miss Andrea Saint Bernard so described, as she described herself, the project sponsor is a high-level individual or group within an organization who provides resources, support, and guidance to ensure a project success. I mean, we didn't have to dig to find that out. That's just what a sponsor is as we know it. They are typically senior managers who advocate for the project, ensure its alignment with business objectives, and hold ultimate accountability for its overall achievements. The project sponsor key roles and responsibilities are to provide resources and support. This includes financial backing, access to necessary resources like personnel and equipment, and the authority to make decisions that impact the project. A project sponsor is an individual who offers financial resources to fund a project. Now, here's what Miss Saint Bernard said her role as project sponsor is, lest we forget.
Can you explain to me what is a project sponsor?
I'm happy to take that question. So the Project Polaris is the concept of building the medical city. The government cabinet of ministers have created a delivery unit to lead in that project. And the delivery unit consists of myself, who is the project sponsor, and so I am the lead government representative responsible for the project. We have a consultant, which Mr. Damien Dolland is the lead of the consulting firm Darasami, which has been our lead strategic advisor with respect to this project. We have also are working with Deputy Permanent Secretary Ms. Siobhan Britton-Tellisford as the Permanent Secretary on assignment to the Project Polaris Delivery Unit.
When we hear sponsor, normally it's this entity or this person is responsible for doing a whole lot of, they are literally the investor behind it. This person is sponsoring. However, in this case, I'm not getting that impression. So I was trying to understand the use of the term sponsor. I could understand you talk about the lead consultant, and so this is pretty clear, but it's the first time I'm hearing of someone being described as a sponsor of a project and is not the person doing the investment behind it. Okay.
So there is no investment component to the terminology being used in project sponsor. It really just means the lead person appointed by cabinet to have responsibility for delivery of the project. It's just the terminology that we've used.
Now, is it true Miss Andrea Saint Bernard is being rewarded yet another time as payback for money spent during the 2022 campaign? Is it true she gave $1 million to fund Deacon's ascension into the NDC? So It's payback time now. Is it true Miss Andrea St. Bernard is the de facto Minister of Health, and that her and the former Minister for Health, Jonathan Lecret, took note after she stepped on his toes? Is Miss St. Bernard the or one of the beneficiaries of Project Polaris? Now let's take a look at Project Polaris. You guys remember the 3D images of the Mount Hatman project? They too had a medical city. Remember that? And oh, use NDC, should I say, leaders, executive members. You all would remember that. You remember the skepticism of the NDC and other independent citizens as well, and maybe rightfully so. How the area did in the south, how would that area manage such a large project? And we're talking the utility companies. We spoke of Grenlec and Nawassa. And how is it going to sustain such a project? Do you remember the 3D images of the Hengshen group, the Livera project, with similar concerns? Well, put those two projects together, the Mount Hatman project and the Livera project. Put them together. They still can't come close to that Hopevale Calavini project. I don't know where it is right now, because first we heard of Calavini and now we're hearing of Hopevale. So the Project Polaris. Put those two projects, Mount Hatman and Livera, together, they still can't come close to Project Polaris. Can Grenlec manage a project of that magnitude? Or we'll have to feed off Lucy Lek and Dommy Lek and all the Leks in the Caribbean, right? Would we have to get a feed from there? How about Nawassa and our water and sewer system? We're speaking of a municipal sewer system and on-site treatment facilities and sewer treatment plants to handle specialized hospital wastewater. And we know we're dealing with not just waste from anywhere, but a hospital. How much will Project Polaris cost Grenada? Who is paying the delivery unit? That 3-man unit that Andrea St. Bernard spoke about, with herself as the project sponsor, Mr. Damian Dolan, the lead consultant, and the deputy permanent secretary, I think in the Ministry of Finance, Ms. Siobhan Britton Telesford, permanent secretary on assignment for the delivery unit. Three men. Well, 3 persons, right? Delivery unit for such a magnitude of a project. And who's paying these people? Where are the estimates in the budget presentation for such? Where are we getting the monies from to fund Project Polaris? We couldn't afford to fund our 2025 budget. Who is paying? The question is, who is paying? More and more, it's looking like Grenada will no longer own a hospital, because we certainly can't afford Project Polaris. And then where is the national insurance? Where are we with that? We fired the consultants and we heard nothing of it since. Man, more than ever, would we like to see the national and the health insurance, national health insurance come to fruition, because a lot of us going to die without that. We can't pay for Project Polaris. We would view it, it will become a tourism site for some of us. Just in the very initial stage, a topographical survey has to be done to know the elevation of the land. A plot plan to show the outline of the buildings, concept plans of the buildings, preliminary plans, etc. All these things cost plenty money. As it stands, we can't even afford to maintain debushing. We don't have a debushing program anymore. We full of bush everywhere, bush going wild by the side of the road. I mean, it is heartbreaking when you drive through or walk through and see the bushes in the city, in the south, along the tourism belt, the drains full of silt and bushes growing on top there, street level. We can't afford to furnish our hospitals at the moment. The X-ray machines has been down a while now. The general hospital is understaffed, under-equipped, and without medicines and materials. Again, who is paying for Project Polaris? Where are we getting the monies from? So, I continue to dig, and I've come across something interesting. Mount Sinai has closed one of their hospitals in New York. And one of them, and that hospital, it was closed because of finances, as far as I saw here. Mount Sinai Beth Israel officially closed its doors Wednesday, more than 2 years after the hospital system first announced plans to shut down the park location. During the morning rush, crews were seen moving signage and other hospital information from the building's facade. The hospital began cutting services in September 2023, citing financial losses and decreasing inpatient volumes as reasons for closures. The State Department of Health approved the closure last July on the conditions Mount Sinai met certain commitments to ensure continued patients' access to care. In a statement Tuesday, and we're not talking now, we're talking about, as I said, in September of 2023. In a statement Tuesday, Mount Sinai announced the opening of an urgent care center 2 blocks away from Beth Israel on First Avenue in New York, Eye and Air Infirmary of Mount Sinai campus on 2nd Avenue and East 14th Street. The future of the former hospital remains uncertain. State Assembly member Javi Estefan, who represents the Manhattan neighborhood, has said there need to be city oversights to ensure what goes there next benefits the community. We have a lack of beds in Lower Manhattan. We do know that we need substantial amounts of affordable housing throughout our community, and we have a housing crisis in our city. Those are really important things that we need to talk about, he said. Right? So, Beth Israel, and then according to the Midtown Gazette, Beth Israel Hospital awaits closure date as criticism of its management arises, right? And that is the same Mount Sinai. The New York State Department of Health has approved Mount Sinai Health System request to permanently shut down Beth Israel Hospital, but multiple ongoing lawsuits are preventing an exact closure date as suspicions around Mount Sinai's intentions intensify. Mount Sinai Health System, which operates 8 hospitals across New York City, acquired Beth Israel, located on East 16th Street and First Avenue, as part of its merger with Continued Health Partners in 2013. Prior to the acquisition, Beth Israel was profitable, producing about $30 million in net income annually, according to tax findings. The hospital was considered a safety net for many, serving low income and uninsured patients. But when it merged, the 799 bed center took a loss of 20 million, and that's when it merged with Mount Sinai. And since 2014, began a financial free fall, losing around 100 million yearly, according to public tax findings. But Israel operating income fell from 1.3 billion in 2013 to 875 million in 2022. The last year for which there is available data, Mount Sinai formally asked the Department of Health for permission to shut down the hospital last September, citing insurmountable financial losses. By the time the New York State Health Department approved Beth Israel's closure this summer, Mount Sinai had already transferred its cardiac surgery, maternity, neonatal care, pediatrics, chemical dependency, and rehabilitation departments to other hospitals in its network, and had decommissioned over 300 beds, representing 40% of the hospital capacity. There are more and more and more, but it's time to move on from Mount Sinai, and just letting you know what some of my diggings I came up with in some of my diggings. I'll continue to keep you updated on Project Polaris. It's something for us to look at. We have to pay attention. On Monday, May the 19th, 2025, the Morris Bishop International Airport runway and road upgrade and rehabilitation project completion was handed over at a ceremony held at the MBIA, and that is the Morris Bishop International Airport, a $67.7 million airport upgrade, expansion and resurfacing of the runway, modernization of the runway navigational lighting system, installation of 2 passengers boarding bridges, renovation of terminal areas, construction of an emergency operations center and airport office. Notably missing from the ceremony were the leader of His Majesty Opposition, Honorable Emmeline Pierre, and her opposition colleagues. Not because they didn't show up, but because they were not invited. On October 20, 2020, the then NNP government broke ground for the multi-million-dollar airport upgrade project. In the midst of the COVID pandemic, the then Prime Minister, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, said, and I quote, "The upgrade and rehabilitation of the Maurice Bishop International Airport, MBIA, is critical to the further development of Grenada. Dr. Mitchell is alive and well today and living in Grenada. He continued, he said, particularly as the country seeks to position itself for the anticipated recovery of the tourism sector, on end of quote. Questions have been asked about the timing of the project, and not just the timing, but also the cost. But at the groundbreaking ceremony, Dr. Mitchell said, and I quote, "This is a necessary investment and the timing is right. The provisions of the most modern and technologically advanced facility is crucial for the tourism industry, specifically and generally for the economic growth and development of Grenada," end of quote. The Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Mitchell, further said, and I quote, "As a government, we are duty bound to provide safe, secure, efficient, and world-class airport facilities and services that are consistent with international standards and which will in fact support the economic development of our country. This is a responsibility we do not take lightly, and it is in fact included in the mission statement of the Grenada Airports Authority," end of quote. Also speaking at that groundbreaking ceremony was Senator Nolan Cox, as the then Minister for Infrastructure, alive and well today as well as Deputy Leader of His Majesty's Opposition and the Deputy President of the Senate, was not invited. On Tuesday, May the 20th, in a post-cabinet briefing, the then Minister, and that is in 2020, the then Minister of Infrastructure, Honorable Nolan Cox, gave an update on the project.
This is the site of the asphalt plant which will supply materials for the expansion project of the Maurice Bishop International Airport. First announced during the 2018 budget presentation, the Maurice Bishop International Airport expansion project is being funded by a concessional loan of $66 million from the People's Republic of China. During Tuesday's post-cabinet briefing, Minister for Infrastructure Nolan Cox was asked to update the media on the status of the project, which now includes the construction of a temporary asphalt plant.
One of the deliverables is resurfacing of the airstrip. And for technical reasons, in terms of the integrity of the asphalt, the relaying of the asphalt, it would make sense to have the asphalt prepared as close as possible to the work of implementation, the site of implementation, so that the asphalt can be laid at the desired temperature. Hence the reason why an asphalt plant is set up. It's a temporary site that is set up.
The minister says the necessary procedures to protect the environment have been completed before construction began.
They would have done an environmental impact assessment that would have gone through physical planning and been approved before setup. Once the project is completed, that plant will be dismantled and removed. For obvious reasons, it would not be able to remain there because of the proximity of the airport.
Minister Cox notes designs for the MBIA expansion are also being finalized.
We already have approval for the commencement of the work on the bypass road, and that road will go all the way. You won't have to pass in front of the airport going forward, and so we should see commencement on that road very soon as well.
The project is expected to include the construction of a parallel taxiway, loading bridges, passenger terminals, a second apron for cargo, and an emergency center.
Compliments GBN. Now, Tourism and the Civil Aviation Minister, the then Honorable Clarice Modeste Cohen, also is alive and well here on island Grenada. What was noticeably missing then, 5 years ago, the comments that came from the NDC openly condemning the project, citing the monies could have been spent otherwise. Healthcare came up a lot. The project was funded through a concessional loan from the People's Republic of China, the first loan that Grenada had taken from China. The groundbreaking ceremony was held on the 36th anniversary of the opening of the Point Salines International Airport. So 2 years before entering office, referring to the Deacon Mitchell NDC-led administration, the project was already on the way. That bunch of upstarts, and they refuse to invite His Majesty's opposition to the handing over ceremony of their vision, a vision that has transformed, so to speak, the Maurice Bishop International Airport and its surroundings. Because we have that lovely bypass road that takes you straight over to Sandals, right? I believe the opposition needs to sound their horns louder and claim what is theirs. The ceremony began with a word of prayer, followed by the national anthems of Grenada and China. And the host or chair of the meeting, our esteemed press secretary, made it clear, stand for prayer and remain standing for the anthems, right? The Governor General refused to put down her handbag. Next to her, the fidgeting Prime Minister, twiddling his fingers and stretching his neck. I mean, I know Nolene giving you some pressure, yeah? And you have some late nights. You walk in St. David's with flashlight. When last you been up in the clouds? It's coming. But pay attention, more so, to the gentleman in the cream suit, right?
The national anthems of Grenada, followed by the national anthem of the People's Republic of China. Thank you. You may have your seats.
It seems like protocol has went out of office with the NNP in 2022. I mean, all the way from St. Lucia, that gentleman in the cream suit, all the way from St. Lucia, this administration went and bring him here to manage. He's a managing director of the airport authority. And texting and getting familiar with his presentation whilst the anthems are being played. Look at the ambassador standing next to him. That gentleman did not even blink whilst the anthem was playing. That's the level of respect these people expect when an anthem is being played, right? And when he catch himself and he realize like some bad little child, he doing something wrong, he shove his hand in his pocket. And then he think, and then he go back again and he pull out the phone and he text again. And he read his presentation again. This is who's managing our international airport at the moment. All the way from St. Lucia, hired by the Deacon Mitchell administration. Maybe this is as good a time to mention to you that the chairperson of the airport authority, Miss Anya Chow Chow, resigned from her position months ago. We were never told. However, a new chairperson replaced her, coming out of New York City, a Miss Shonda Kador, Procurement Director, Americas, Alston. You could read the article yourself. Ms. Kador travels to Grenada for board meetings when she can find the time out of a busy schedule to do so. Who is paying for that? We're making people in the diaspora, and really, I have no issue with that. But who is paying for the trips to come to Grenada for the meetings? If you're in the diaspora, then Zoom meetings. Zoom meetings. Now listen to our press secretary, Ms. Neela Athia, the host of the event, as she made small talk before introducing her first presenter. We boy in the cream suit.
The airport, the Morris Bishop International Airport runway road upgrade and rehabilitation project stands as a testament to what can be achieved with the right vision, collaboration, and unwavering dedication.
You see, the National Deceptive Cult, NDC, never fails, speaking as if and making as if the NDC, but moreover, you know who, is the visionary behind the Morris Bishop International Airport runway and road upgrade rehabilitation project, willfully misleading the ones who don't know. No mention of the commencement date of the project, no recognition of the former administration to the then leader, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, and his team, his cabinet, no mention. But they're talking about vision. Here's a snippet of the presentation of Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, the deceptive Mitchell.
Good morning. Your Excellency Dame Cecile Lagrenade, our Governor General, His Excellency Wei Hongxian, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to Grenada, Mr. Alva Brown, our Permanent Secretary at the Ministry for Infrastructure and Transportation, Mr. Edgar Stevens, the Chief Executive Officer of the Morris Bishop International Airport, and his management team, and I recognize board members who are also present with us this morning. Mr. Calvin Lee and his team from China Harbor Engineering Construction. I recognize the Chief Technical Officer from the Ministry of Infrastructure, as well as the engineer, Mr. Mark from the Ministry of Infrastructure, who was assigned to this project, staff and members of the Morris Bishop International Airport, members of the Chinese community who are with us this morning. Welcome all to this official handing over ceremony of the Morris Bishop Runway Road Upgrade and Rehabilitation Project. And this is a project that the National Democratic Congress government inherited when it took office in the middle of 2022. It is very important for us to mark this milestone because, as you would have heard from Mr. Lee and from the Chinese ambassador, this was a very challenging project. And I think we have to appreciate, and I want to commend the team at the Morris Bishop International Airport. I want to commend Czech. I want to commend Ambassador for the support, and I want to commend the team at the Ministry of Infrastructure for sticking to it and making sure that we saw this project through. We have to appreciate that we were renovating the runway of an airport that was being actively used, and that this was accomplished without at any point in time disrupting service to the public or to users of the airport. And this, I think, in and of itself is a tremendous accomplishment, and all stakeholders involved in this process, I think, deserves a round of applause. Sometimes we take things for granted. If something goes wrong, we all complain. But too often, when the right decisions are being made to ensure that nothing goes wrong, we fail to appreciate the significant work and effort that persons put in to make this reality. And I appreciate that there were many challenges, many obstacles, frustrations, sometimes misalignment, non-coordination. But at the end of the day, I think all parties recognize that it was in our collective interest to make sure that we work together to overcome the hurdles, but also to learn and to grow from this process. I certainly believe China Harbor is now better equipped to continue working on difficult and complex projects in the Caribbean in circumstances where you cannot close or shut down the site that you're working on. I'm sure our team at the Morris Bishop International Airport is better able to coordinate and help supervise and manage further renovation and expansion work that this airport needs, bearing in mind that it is now 41 years old and there are other areas for attention to improve the passenger experience, to improve the staff experience, and to improve our third-party partners' experience. I'm sure that the team at the Ministry of Infrastructure has also learned a lot from this experience. I want to place on record our appreciation to the government and people of China for financing this project through the Export-Import Bank of China. This was not an inexpensive project. The project is a $67.742 million US upgrade and rehabilitation project. And it tells us that major infrastructure, even in small island developing states, requires significant funding. And this was 100% funded through the Export-Import Bank of China. And so I place on record the government and people of Grenada's appreciation to the government and people of China through the Export-Import Bank for financing this project.
I let it go for a little bit so that you can hear. There's nowhere in there did he mention the former administration, former prime minister, the opposition. Nowhere in there. Everybody get thanked, from the guy cleaning the floors right up. Everybody got mentioned and thanked for that project. But very lethargic, eh? He had to walk. Places in St. David's he's never been before. He has to walk in the dark with flashlights. So I know everybody gonna get some more solar lights work. More invoices gonna come for solar lights. More eat of food. More food to eat. Food for soul. Never thought Grenada had so much food. Food for soul. He said they inherited the project. That's the furthest he went. They inherited the project. Who? From who? Your grandfather? Your grandmother? Who did you inherit that project from? He thanked and recognized everyone except the members of the opposition. But I believe the worst was the Misslinger who came to give the vote of thanks on behalf of the airport authority.
Acknowledging all protocols as previously established, good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Grenada Airport Authority, it is truly our privilege to extend our heartfelt thanks for this occasion, the completion and handover of the Maurice Bishop International Airport runway and road upgrade and rehabilitation project. To our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Dickon Mitchell, and the Government of Grenada, thank you for your leadership and your commitment to national development. Your vision has helped to drive this initiative forward.
She thanked the Honorable Prime Minister and his government of Grenada for their leadership and commitment to national development. Your vision, she said, has helped to drive this initiative forward. Your vision, she said. Their vision, NDC condemned that project. Mind you, as owner when I was a part of it, this time I'm long gone, because I resigned from the NDC in 2018, immediately after the 2018 elections. They condemned it. No, it's their vision. I mean, come on. How much more you're going to take us for fools? How much longer? But this is not the only time this was done. It was done several times. More recently, on the 8th of April, at the sod turning of the St. Andrew Anglican Primary School. Invisibly missing from the picture was the former Minister of Education and now leader of His Majesty Opposition, Honorable Emmeline Pay, who is alive and well and is on island, and the Member of Parliament for the area. What is the Ministry of Education was instructed not to invite her. On page 17, 19 through 20 of the 2022 budget, so that is before the coming of the NDC, the last budget presentation of the new National Party before the 2022 elections, it reads, get my glasses again. Mr. Speaker, and this is on page 17, we will roll out a comprehensive maintenance program targeting all schools that are in good condition or have been recently rehabilitated or constructed. Government will continue to build out our school infrastructure in 2023, including the rehabilitation and construction of the Convent Grenville Secondary School, the J.W. Fletcher, the Anglican Primary School, the Christian Academy, and the St. David's Catholic Secondary School. A total allocation for schools infrastructure in 2023 is 13.2 million. And to continue, on page 20, well, I got to take it from 19 so it can flow properly. Some key areas of focus in 2022 will be the Grenada Education Enhancement Project, GEEP, Phase 1 and 2. Major construction works are going under this important project with funding from the Caribbean Development Bank, Phase 1, which involves work on several schools, including Bishop College in Carriacou, Presentation Brothers College, the Grenada SDA Comprehensive School, St. Joseph Convent, St. George's, and the Grenville, will be completed in the first quarter of next year at the cost of EC $43.5 million. Phase 2 of this project, valued at EC $41.8 million, will see construction rehabilitation works on several other schools, including the St. Andrew Anglican Primary, Grenadian Christian Academy, the St. David's Catholic Secondary School, and J.W. Fletcher Memorial Secondary. Work will commence before March next year. A sum of EC 6.2 million is allocated for the project in 2022. But of course, election came, and because this was a 2022 budget presentation, and new government came in. Clearly, the former administration had its ducks in a row. The drawings were already done, and it was in the tendering stage when administration changed. So you're doing a little sword turning. What would it take from you to invite the opposition, to invite the former Minister of Education, who was instrumental in getting to this point? She is now the leader of His Majesty's opposition. What would it take of you? But you know what's important? The people know. The voters know. And they will vote accordingly. Folks, I want to share with you a video of what I term transparency, accountability, and good governance.
Mr. Honorable Deacon Mitchell and his cabinet colleagues welcomed Premier of the Cayman Islands, Honorable Juliana O'Connor Connolly, and her delegation to contribute toward Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique's relief efforts following the hurricane earlier this month. The Premier and her team, which included the Leader of the Opposition, Speaker of the House, Acting Deputy Governor, members of government, media personnel, members of the police service and Rotary Club, and health officials arrived at the Maurice Bishop International Airport on Tuesday to personally donate over US $50,000 in essential supplies to aid in relief and recovery and US $200,000 to the government's disaster relief fund. The trip to Grenada is part of a mission by the Cayman Islands to provide aid to all countries in the region affected by Hurricane Beryl at the beginning of July. Prime Minister Mitchell thanked the Premier for accepting the challenge to promote Caribbean unity and assured that the supplies will be used to the benefit of all in need in the hurricane-affected areas.
This gesture really means a lot to us. It is very touching, and we deeply appreciate it. So I want you to take back the message that we appreciate the solidarity, appreciate the support. And as I said, in a sense, we are both celebrating the 20th anniversary of Vival. It is still early in the hurricane season. So my wish for the Cayman and for Grenada is that we don't have to endure any of this for the remainder of the season. Every time it rains, I cringe a little because I'm thinking about people with the roofs and what they are going through. And the challenge is, we came out of a very severe drought. In fact, the rains had just started falling, and then we faced this with this. So no doubt, it's a difficult time for many of our citizens. When people ask me how I'm doing, I say I'm doing fine because I have a roof over my head. But there are obviously thousands of our citizens who've lost everything. And I want to point out they're journeying from here to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So this is not just about Grenada, but it's really about all of the islands that have been impacted by this. And I can certainly say in advance of Comrade Gonzalez that I know he and his people will be truly grateful for the visit as well and for the show of support. I'm also hoping to visit this afternoon as a show of support to him as well. And we have other prime ministers from Antilles and Kitts and Lucia and Dorman hoping to make the trip over as well.
Premier O'Connor Connolly stressed the significance of unity in times of need. She's optimistic that Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique will rise again.
We wanted to bring not just the government representative, but two former premiers actually here. The current speakers are all there. We have opposition, independent opposition, Chris. So we covered all of the spectrum to ensure that you received it as we are given it with an open heart from one sister to another sister, from one brother to another brother. You were quite correct when you said we are just at the beginning of the season. I had the opportunity in February this year to attend the Hurricane Conference in Orlando, and we were forewarned that this is not going to be a normal season. It was going to be more hurricanes, they were going to be stronger, and for those of us in Cayman, we fear perhaps the first 2 weeks in September and the end of October, because then they usually come up from the south with very little warning. And so because we've been through it before, I just wanted to, if you don't remember anything else about Juliana from Cayman Islands, remember the God that did it for Cayman, that allowed us to be stronger and better, become more resilient. That same God has no respect of persons, and he's going to do it for Grenada, he's going to do it for St. Vincent. And our next stop is PM Holness sometime later this week or the following week to spread the same message,
Compliments GIS. She spoke of we. Now, there we see the premier of the Cayman Island. And they said, the news report said, and her team bringing relief to the government and people of Grenada. On board was the leader of the opposition. In the words of the Prime Minister, let me repeat that. On board was the leader of her opposition, part of her delegation, riding on the same airplane. Let's go to Grenada. Transparency and accountability, good governance. He ain't saying that in his face. In his face. Travel on the same aircraft. The monies and the supplies they donated wasn't hers as premier or her party. It belonged to the government and people of the Cayman Islands, which includes the opposition. So he had every right to be on the aircraft to come down to Grenada to deliver. Nothing wrong with that. Keeping them away, hiding them, not exposing them, ain't going to help you. It just shows you up for exactly who you are. The monies are not yours. Everybody, we have to pay it back for the airport. The opposition has a role. It's part of our constitution. Invite them. The premier came with a team, a huge entourage. She had former premiers on board with her. That's what we call inclusion. And you speak of inclusion. You guys use words with no actions. The opposition leader, judges, a whole plane load. In other news, Gitau is accusing the Minister of Labour, Claudette Joseph, aka Cinti daughter, of union busting. Play clip.
The Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union GTAU is expressing strong discontent with what is described as a blatant denial of workers' constitutional right to union representation by the Minister of Labour. TAU, following a formal request by the employees, applied to the Ministry of Labour to become the official bargaining agent for managerial staff at the Grenada Airport Authority GAA. According to GTAU President Andrew Lewis, an anonymous poll was scheduled for May 19th to determine if the workers wished to be represented by the union. However, during a virtual meeting on May 14th involving GAA officials, union representatives, and the Labour Commissioner, concerns were raised by GAA regarding some employees' eligibility to participate in the poll. GTAU contested this and requested proof, to which the GAA subsequently requested time to investigate and provide a response before the scheduled poll. But instead, the union was met with a startling response from the Labour Commissioner on May 15th, effectively denying the application on the guidance of Minister for Labour, Claudette Joseph.
The correspondence from the Labour Commissioner that was copied to ourselves. So it was written to the General Manager of the airport. And I will just read for you. Basically, the Labour Commissioner is saying that the Minister has directed that the certification for GTAW for the proposed bargaining unit is hereby refused. I want to repeat that according to the Labour Commissioner, she has been directed by the Minister for Labour to refuse the application to be certified as the exclusive bargaining agent of the management staff of the Grenada Airports Authority, without giving the workers an opportunity to vote.
President Lewis described the Minister for Labour's move as an attempt to dismantle organised labour and engage in union-busting tactics.
So the Minister has made a determination to refuse the poll. This here is the letter from the Labour Commissioner. This here is the letter from the Labour Commissioner. And we have to say the state. We can't say anything else. What is the objective of the Department of Labour, the Minister of Labour, who is also the Attorney General, yes, and the state and the government? It's akin to union busting, and it's akin to trying to weaken organized labour, because remember, our strength is in our membership.
He further emphasized that GTAU will fiercely defend workers' rights and is calling on the minister to reverse the decision and respect the democratic will of the employees.
This year we are sending a warning to the airport. We are sending a warning to the administration because the vote falls on you. And let's be clear. The chairperson of the board of directors have been calling around the managers, or most of them, since the day that we are meeting at the Ministry of Labour. We'll do everything that is required. That is part of our response here, right? You can rest assured that the Technical Allied Workers Union will be doing whatever is necessary, right? Because we have that fundamental responsibility. This is now about trade union representation, and not just for TAU.
GBN made several attempts to contact the Ministry of Labour for a response from either the Labour Commissioner or the Minister for Labour, but calls went unanswered. The news team will continue to follow this developing story. Rena P. Thomas, GBN News.
Compliment GBN. Now, y'all know if that was the other way around, Monday morning, NDC would have been in the streets, right? Y'all know that. All 50 of them would have been in the streets demonstrating against union busting and blah, blah, blah. Now, in an effort to do damage control, a press release was put out, and it says, the caption, application by the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union for certification of the exclusive bargaining agent for managerial employees at the Grenada Airports Authority. 20th of May 2025, St. George's, Grenada, Division of Labour, Ministry of Legal Affairs, Labour and Consumer Affairs. And those are the accolades of Saint Daughter. The government of Grenada has been made aware of certain statements made by the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union, GTAU, at a press conference held on Monday, the 19th May 2025, regarding its application to the Division of Labor for certification as the exclusive bargaining agent for the managerial employees of the Grenada Airports Authority, GAA. The Division of Labor hereby clarifies some of the matters addressed at the press conference. By a letter dated 2nd May 2025, GTAU made an application pursuant to Section 33 of the Labor Relations Act for certification as the bargaining agent for managers employed at the airport. By law, a poll must take place within 14 days of receiving the application. But before that, the Labor Commissioner must conduct an exercise to consider the appropriateness of the bargain unit in accordance with Section 35 of the Labor Law. Well, the Labor Commissioner doesn't take care of that already, and she fling her under the bus. Relations Act. The Labor Commissioner was out of office on medical leave when the letter of the 2nd of May was received and scheduled to return on the 12th of May 2025. So the Labor Commissioner is out of office and work stopped. And she was on medical leave. So anything could have happened. She could have been out for weeks. And because she's out of office, nothing gets done. So that's where we at this point in Grenada, the state of Grenada, right? Being cognizant of the 14 days requirement of the act and the fact that she would have insufficient time for the date of her return to fulfill the legal requirements. Now, this is the Attorney General speaking here, right? Okay. The Division of Labor requested the union's consent to extend the deadline for conducting the poll. The union declined the request. But of course, because we can sit down and wait on one individual. How productive is that? The lady's out on medical leave. Yes, medical leave, right? Poor excuse. Poor excuse. By letter of the 12th of May 2025, the Labor Commissioner invited Airports Authority and the union to a meeting at the Ministry of Labor, the Department of Labor, on Tuesday, the 13th May 2025, to determine the appropriateness of the bargaining unit as required by Section 35 of the Act. The letter also informed the parties that once the appropriateness of the bargaining unit is determined, a poll will be conducted on Thursday, the 15th May 2025, clearly establishing a precondition for the conduct of the poll as stipulated by the Act. The meeting was rescheduled and instead took place on Wednesday, the 14th May 2025. The union representative from the Airport Authority attended. At the meeting, the Labor Commissioner was unable to fully consider all the matters required by Section 35 of the Act, including the community of interest among the employees in the proposed bargaining unit, the nature and scope of the duties exercised by the employees in the proposed bargaining unit, and the views of the employer and the trade unions concerned as to the appropriateness of the bargaining unit. The Airports Authority asked for more time to properly examine the roles of the managers within the proposed bargaining unit and to make submissions to inform her determinations. the request of the Airport Authority not being unreasonable and being required to make the determination stipulated by Section 35, the Labour Commissioner asked the parties to consider rescheduling the meeting for the following Thursday to give the Airport Authority the time requested to prepare its submission. However, the union rejected the proposal and requested the Labour Commissioner to submit in writing a justification for the extended deadline. It goes on. Let me end the last paragraph. The Division of Labour remains committed to the interests of employees and employers alike as the neutral party in the tripartite arrangement in the fulfillment of this commitment. The Department of Labor is guided by the provisions of the Labor Code and the principles of fairness in the fulfillment of social justice. Now, we know that the leader of the cabinet, is not worker friendly. We know that. We also know that the Department of Labor had and probably still have endless cases where the Prime Minister, as a corporate lawyer, worked and supported the employers against its workers. Case in point, I did a whole program on the SGU situation where, according to the workers, the then Deacon Mitchell, as representing Mitchells and Co., said to their bosses that if they didn't take the vaccination, then they forfeited their jobs. They don't want to work. To date, these workers have not been paid severance or any type of settlement from the St. George's University. Simon Says we'll continue to follow this story and bring you an update. And while I'm at the MBIA, what's going on at the tower? Information reaching me is that they are operating with half their usual staff, only 6 air traffic controllers. Now, is this true? Word is several air traffic controllers have resigned their position. Is it true we are now operating under regional and international standards? In some cases, they have to resort to using persons without the required license because they are short-staffed. And is it true persons are also working extensive hours, which goes against the requirements of the Eastern Caribbean Aviation Authority, ECA, and the International Civil Aviation Authority? Is it true the new CEO from St. Lucia monthly package exceeds $49,000? We go round it off at 50. That's the young boy that was fidgety there in the cream suit, texting while the anthem's playing. Is it true he brought in one of his countrymen, paid him $15,000 to do a tabletop exercise? In other words, a simulation exercise where the key stakeholders, where they go through this simulation exercise. We've seen it in the news and so. Is it true that over the years, the Airport Authority has been performing this exercise quite competently, using locals to spearhead the exercise successfully, executing that operation successfully, using experts like Sylvan McIntyre, ASP John Mitchell, Sidney Charles, who has been involved in search for over 40 years. It's like big money ain't good for us anymore. This administration finds their friends' friends to just give our monies to. Is it true Prime Minister Deacon just like to pay out big monies to foreigners and foreign companies? But they had to have a relation, eh? They had to have a relation. Folks, we take a quick break and come right back.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.
In an answer to questions on the new pension SUSU scheme, the government side left more questions than answers. Question 1. Would a nurse who was on a public service commission contract for the last 3.5 years in a truly vacant position be considered a new public sector employee for the purpose of Public Sector Employees Pension Act? Which pension arrangement would this worker qualify under? And the answer, no. A nurse or any other public service employee who has been engaged on a public service commission contract for the last 3.5 years in a truly vacant position will not be considered a new public sector employee for the purpose of the new public sector employees pension. These workers will be covered under the old pension agreement. I'm smiling because I can't believe what I'm hearing here. And they're saying that that individual, that nurse or public servant, will be under the 1958 plan. But that's a good answer in writing, right? The government side gave the opposition the answer they want them to hear. But that is a deceptive answer. And what's new? Totally untrue, according to the legal reasons for the said SUSU scheme, the new pension plan. What they are saying is that the person who is not appointed and acting in a position that individuals fall under the 1958 plan. That's what the lawyers were begging them to do. That's what the workers expected. That's what they said they would do in the campaign and never happened. And once they got into office, what did they say? The country cannot sustain that. So they have to come with a new plan. And what did they come up with? A new SUSU scheme. So then what is the reason for the new SUSU scheme? If you're saying that individual asked about, that the opposition asked about, would fall under the 1958 plan, what is the reason? What is the reason for the new scheme? And why are deductions already being made since January 25 from persons' salaries, even as we speak? What are you deducting their monies for? Your answer do not match your very own analogy. According to your analogy, one has to be an established worker, meaning someone that is definitively appointed right, by the PSC. That individual falls under the 1958 plan. And someone that is unestablished, someone on contract, not hired by the Public Service Commission, falls under the new SUSU scheme. Isn't that what it's about? You guys continue to try to take us for fools, but it ain't working. I want you to listen to this clip and hear what the Prime Minister have to say on that.
That's why I want to talk about the reality. And I want to say that to our citizens. There are a lot of people who will tell you about constitution and constitutionality and all kind of stories. You have to ask yourself, if you're one of the 4,500 plus persons who don't have a pension and who not had one, where these people were over the last 10 years? Where were the advocacy for you? What did they do to highlight the situation or to try and solve the problem? I want to make it clear. This isn't costing this administration anything. Understand this. We are trying to give you something that you don't have in a sustainable manner that is yours. All of those who talk about constitution and constitutionality, they have theirs already. 10 times over. And they have never sought to give you anything. So for me, this is not an issue about constitutionality. We are satisfied, having worked with consultants, having worked with the Attorney General's chambers, that there is nothing unconstitutional about the bill. The bill is not taking away anybody's rights. As I've said, the bill explicitly repeals the Pension Disqualification Act. The only people who have any right to a pension right now are these established public officers who are currently working. So a teacher who ain't working with the government 5 years from now has no rights.
Right. A teacher who's hired tomorrow,
yes.
What is the regime they come under?
They will come under the new pension regime. Right, and therefore this whole notion of established and non-established workers is a notion that ultimately, I'm going to use this word, will no longer be of any distinction with a meaning. Because to a large extent, the single almost defining act of this is these pension issues.
And then the other question is, who does the hiring? Is it Government of Grenada or would it be Public Service Commission? That new teacher being hired tomorrow.
Well, I would simply say the Government of Grenada. At the end of the day, all employees really and truly work for the Government of Grenada. The Public Service Commission is a commission or a mechanism that was created as part of the Constitution. And I'm going to use this word in layman terms to give some buffer to how you protect public officers from arbitrariness or political arbitrariness and those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, the Public Service Commission doesn't pay you. Right? The Public Service Commission, I will use this word, is a more disciplinarian, hiring, firing, promoting, etc. But they're not your employer. It's the taxpayers of Grenada who pay you, and it's the government of Grenada who's employed you. Right? And we need to be careful that people don't tie us up into a lot of language issues that isn't dealing with the stark reality of what you're facing.
Just by the way, I don't know if anyone of you could answer this question. When he says, because he says it all the time, I will use this word. Which one of the words do you think he meant? I don't know, because he given a full paragraph, a statement. I will use this word. Which one of the words? I just had to say the one. Forgive me. No, you heard the arrogance, right? You heard it. Now, the same question basically was asked to him by the host of Beyond the Headlines, and his answer was, so a teacher who is hired tomorrow, what is the regime they'll come under? That was the question. And the answer, they'll come under the new pension regime. It's the same question that was asked, really, just a little bit different time, and they specified a nurse. The same question. And they answered in that question and said the 1958 pension. And here, which is it? Which is it? And if you sing in the written answer, that is in the 1958 pension plan, then we don't need your SUSU plan. There are nurses, yes, who's been there working for umpteen years and should in fact be recognized under the 1958 pension plan. And that's a fact. And that's what you promised. That's what you promised. The 1958 plan, these workers should hold the government accountable. According to your answer, your written answer, not only nurses, but all public workers who fit the plan. And therefore, if that's your plan, then there are a few questions to be answered. One, how soon will these nurses or public workers be confirmed? If you're answering that they're under the 1958 plan, how soon will these nurses or public workers be confirmed? Two, what is the effective date of confirmation? And three, please note, confirmation should be retroactive. Question 2, should the fund run into financial problems? Does the law provide for a government guaranteed on the pension to the member? Answer. The new pension plan adopts the defined contribution designed. Therefore, there is no risk to the fund experiencing financial problems, as it is a defined contribution plan. All assets are calculated to individual members. And so the goal is to make sure that the fund achieves market rates to return. There is no contingent liability for the government of Grenada once the full past service credit has been paid as approved. Yet another deceptive answer. A completely wrong answer, and wrong by law. To begin with, the funds is unlawful. The act is unconstitutional. It's a contingent liability, which is a potential obligation that could arise in the future, depending on the outcome of an uncertain event. It's a possible debt or obligation that may or may not become a real liability based on future events outside of the entity's control. While not a definite liability, it is a potential concern that could impact the government's financial position if the uncertain event occurs. Therefore, the government is responsible. They must be responsible. There must be a liability on central government. Lest we forget, here is Attorney James Bristol on the matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult for me to sit back and listen to this rhetoric. I'm sorry, Mr. Gilchrist. First, you start off like a politician and not a consultant, right? You start off by trying or saying that the union executive are okay, Jack, so they don't care about the people. Don't do that on this forum. That sort of thing is for politicians. Now, right? The union has never said they don't want the Pension Act, you know, but it's how you do what you want to do. While you are saying, and the government is selling the act on the basis and trying to damage the union at the same time on the basis that we've got so many thousand or hundred unestablished workers who need this. There's no doubt about that. But why is the government at the same time trying to deprive public officers of their rights under the existing legislation, which are better than this proposed legislation? They're doing that by the way they've crafted Section 3. And some of those, or probably many of those so-called unestablished workers that Mr. Gilchrist is referring to, who we feel so sorry for, are people who should properly benefit from the better existing legislation. And they're depriving many of those 4,000 from the better benefits under the existing legislation by trying to circumvent the provisions of the Constitution. So it's disingenuous, Mr. Gilchrist, to say what you have said. Very disingenuous, because you're not facing the legal reality, which is that the constitutional rights under Section 92 of so-called unestablished, which are probably established if you look at the facts, right? Because you can't put a contract to take away people's rights. Many of those people are probably entitled right now to pension. So it's not this new bill that's giving them pension. They're probably entitled to it as we speak under the existing law. What about them? So the union is fighting for everybody who's entitled under existing legislation to receive that entitlement and to ensure that the new regime applies to new workers coming in, new public officers, which is correct. The Constitution allows for that. Fair enough. And the mechanics and so forth and nitty-gritty to be worked out. That's not a problem. The problem is these so-called unestablished or contract workers. That is the problem. A new pension law is not a problem. It's welcome. The government has to do it. Because, it is, as Mr. Gilchrist said, it's not fiscally responsible to carry on as we are. We're going to bust. But you've got to get the right people within its framework.
And that's not
happening. That's not happening because a lot of people are going in here who's supposed to be under the existing regime and who are entitled to pension as we speak. We didn't know no law to pass for it. Some of those 4,000, I am pretty sure the majority of those 4,000 are entitled to pension under the existing legislation. And why they're trying to do it is because of the money aspect. So the government should not shirk from this responsibility, but should carry out their obligations. It's simple as that. I don't know why. The money is not the minister's money. It's our taxpayers' money. Why are they're skirting around it when we have to find money to travel or to do this or to do all sorts of fancy things? 200 million on an airport that we can't see the benefit of, right? They find it.
It is unconstitutional. As Attorney Jimmy Bristol Casey is related to the Section 92 in the Constitution. Now, what he's saying and what he said is that the greater percentage of these so-called unestablished workers, the 4,000 plus, should fall under the 1958 plan. The answer that was given on paper. But they come with a SUSU plan, start to deduct the people's monies, and they don't even know where the money's going. But let me read for you because and Simon says we had to, bring the receipt. So let me read for you Section 92 of the Grenada Constitution Order 1973. And the caption is Pension Laws and Protection of Persons of Pension Rights. Pension Laws and Protection of Pension Rights. Section 92, subsection 1. The law to be applied with respect to any pension benefits that are granted to any persons before this section comes into operation shall be the law that was in the force at the date on which those benefits were granted, or any law in force at a later date that is not less favorable to that person. The Susu plan is less favorable. We got to go with the 1958 plan. Subsection 2, the law to be applied with respect to any pension benefits, not being benefits to which subsection 1 of this section applies, shall, and shall in law means compulsory, shall, in so far as those benefits are wholly in respect of a period of service as a judge or public officer that commenced before the date upon which this action comes into operation, be the law that was enforced on the date upon which this section comes into operation, and subsection B, is so far as those benefits are wholly or partly in respect of the period of service as a judge or public officer that commence after the section comes into operation, be the law in force on the date on which that period of service commenced, or any law enforced at the later date that is not less favorable to that person. Section 3, where a person is entitled to exercise an option as to which of the two or more laws shall apply in his case, the law for which he opts shall, for the purpose of this section, be deemed to be more favorable to him than the other law or laws. Exactly what the attorney QC was saying. Section 5. In this section, pension benefits means any pension, compensation, and I want you to listen to this section. Pay attention, because later on I'll tell you why. Section 5. In this section, pension benefits means any pension, compensation, gratuities, or other like allowances for persons in respect of their service as judge or public officers, or for the widows, children, dependents, or personal representative of such persons in respect of their service. In other words, when someone goes on pension, that person dies, the same allowances, their benefits, their allowances, compensation, gratuity, whatever their benefits are, it passes on to the widowers, I guess, children, dependents, or personal representatives for such persons in respect of such service. Okay, so you heard that there clearly coming from our constitution, and that is what Attorney at Law Jimmy Bristol was harping on, right? So we're moving on to question 3. The 1958 pension law allows for 66 and 2/3% of the worker's last salary. If so, what is the percentage and which section of the law this information can be found? And we're speaking of the new Susu plan, right? The new Susu pension. The answer: the new pension plan does not guarantee any minimum or maximum replacement rate. As a defined contribution plan, each member contribution, employer, employee, volunteer, accumulate with interest upon reinstatement. The amount accumulated in the member's account will be available for drawdown or purchase of an annuity. Now, all this rigmarole up here is to tell you the answer, in their answer, what we've been saying all along. It's a SUSU plan. And when you draw down what you save, case closed. That's it. It doesn't go further. Right? What is available for drawdown is what you get. End of story. Now, all along, the government denied that the new pension plan was a SUSU scheme. However, now they have gotten the workers to buy into their SUSU plan. They let them know that it's a SUSU plan, right? When you draw down what you have in your account, when you draw it down, that's it. So if you draw it down before you die, you have to figure out how you're going to live for the rest of your life, much less your dependents, as stated in the Constitution for the 1958 the 1958 pension plan, right? But when it comes to the deceptive cult, here is the Attorney General on that.
Under the current scheme, when a pensioner dies, the estate gets the pension for 1 year and then it stops. Right? 1 year and then it stops. Under this scheme, when the pensioner dies, the beneficiaries get the pension for life or until the fund itself is depleted. Because the nature of this contributory scheme, it would come a time, but a long time in future, when the fund could technically, in theory, be depleted. So once there's sums to the credit of the deceased, the beneficiary will get. So that's a big advantage over the existing scheme. 1 year versus for life. It goes on and you get paid. All right? Then the fund itself is protected. You have built-in protections to the fund. So section 61 says, notwithstanding anything to the contrary in any other enactment, no amount standing to the credit of a member or person specified under section 42(3), and no benefit standing to the credit of a member or person specified shall be transferred, assigned, charged, seized, attached, given as security, or surrendered, except for the purposes of satisfying a debt due to the government or an employer, or an order of the court for payment of periodical sums of money towards maintenance of a spouse, former spouse, a minor child of the member. So if you owe any other debt, if you have any kind of other debt, this fund is protected. This law says no debtor could come after these funds.
Now, contrary to what they just said on paper, that when you draw down money done, that's it. She is standing there lying in plain sight, saying, twist it, turn it around the other way, saying that the 1958 plan, the beneficiary, I think she said after 1 year, then that's it, nobody gets anything. There's nowhere, I just read it for you. There's nowhere in the Constitution it said that. And then she's saying that their Susu plan goes on for life of the worker and life of their beneficiaries. That is a big lie. That is totally deceptive. And that is coming from the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs and Minister of Labor. All the important ministry when it comes to workers. Consumer Affairs. They are assuring you, the worker, that the new pension law is different. There is no guaranteed pension with the new pension law. It is unlawful. There was no fiscal impact study presented in Parliament accompanying the bill, which is recommended by law. According to the Public Finance Management Act 2015, Section 26, subsection 1, in each fiscal year, every proposed legislation submitted for approval by Parliament shall, the word shall, be accompanied by a fiscal impact analysis stating the proposed legislation estimated effect on revenues and expenditures. That was not done. For the fiscal year which the legislation will become effective, as well as the legislation fiscal impact on multi-year planning and budgeting. So not just for the year, but beyond. You have to show if it's going to be sustainable, right? Subsection 2, the minister shall prepare detailed instructions regarding the nature of the analysis to be done and the process of validating the fiscal impact. Subsection 3, the minister shall provide an option to Parliament on the adequacy of such fiscal impact analysis. Now, this couldn't be clearer. This couldn't be clearer. I don't understand how the workers, the so-called contract workers, sit there, 4,000 of them, and allow this administration to go against the laws. Actually, the opposition, and didn't stand up. They should not have even gone to Parliament, with that law. Because the government went against the law. Against the law, right? And the workers grumbling behind the scenes. You know how many of them contacted me? I mean, they meet me in the streets. I don't know where my money going. They're taking out my money. Stand up for yourselves. Stand up, folks. It was a money bill. And therefore, the proposed legislation submitted for approval by the Parliament should have been accompanied by a fiscal impact analysis, which was not done. And therefore, the bill should be null and void. A clear case of going against the law. Did they pass a structure of the new pension plan? No. In other words, have the workers who are contemplating this new pension plan be presented with a sample? Were they presented? No. And that's because these workers don't have a choice. It was made mandatory. This is where we are today. And this deceptive cult giving us one answer on paper, a totally different analogy in the parliament or answers in the parliament, and everybody just sit down taking it. Question 4. Section 3, 1B, subsection 2 of the pension law excludes a specific group of workers based on set criteria. Please advise which law covers people falling under this criteria. And that's according to their new SUSU plan. Answer. Employees who have neither attained the age of 50 years nor have been employed with the government for a period exceeding 50 years and are not eligible to receive a pension, gratuity, or other allowance in accordance with the relevant enactment are covered under the Public Sector Pension Act. Employees of the government who are currently employed in the public service for a period exceeding 15 years, and are 50 years of age or older are entitled to the ex gratia monthly payment based on Cabinet Conclusion number 1221 of June 22, 1988, the ex gratia plan. Temporary employees, these employees will be covered under the new Pension Act upon confirmation. People are seconded from statutory bodies or government agencies with established pension arrangements will be covered under these arrangements. The new pension agreement does not include workers who have been in the system for over 15 years and who have attained the ages of 15 years. Neither are you to benefit under the 1958 plan. So the question was, what law will cater for those employees? And their answer is essentially there is no law. They are under a cabinet conclusion of 1988 that gives them ex gratia payments. Now, ex gratia payments are even less than the seed payments. The ex gratia calculation, and I'll have that put up on the screen as well. The ex gratia calculations is whatever your last salary times your years of service divided by 50. Let me say that. Let me take that again. The ex gratia calculations is whatever your last salary times your years of service divided by 50. The one good thing about ex gratia, as opposed to the SUSU scheme, it is for life. As little as it is for life. The thing about ex gratia, anyway, government can cancel ex gratia by the stroke of a pen. No pun intended. It is not law. It is a cabinet conclusion since 1988. In a submission number 184, dated September the 15th, 1986, from the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Lands, the subject says payment of ex gratia allowances to unestablished workers. It reads, I need to get my glasses for that one because the printer, it's worn, it's old, right? Cabinet is advised that in November 1982, the People's Revolutionary Government agreed to the payment of ex gratia allowances to unestablished workers follows. For persons who have served continuously with government for 15 years, are at least 50 years old, an ex gratia allowance be awarded as follows. Formula: final wage by number of completed years divided by 50. Subject to a maximum of 400 months service. So you see, since 1986, there goes the submission. And then there was the cabinet conclusion of 1988, right? The People Revolutionary Government, an illegal grouping, made a cabinet conclusion that today we are using to pay workers after their retirement. Bold and brave. After we have a new pension plan, we leave them out of the new pension plan and giving them returns under a cabinet conclusion of an illegal government. Now, you created a new pension plan. You created it. It's new. New laws. Why continue this ex gratia payment? Why? Out of a revolutionary cabinet. These workers left hanging there should be under the 1958 pension plan. Workers, union, stand up for your workers. Why are you still keeping people under ex gratia? Even after the 2022 court ruling that we all was happy about. Again, ex gratia is not a legal instrument. Question 5. The government has announced the commencement of the deductions from members or workers in the absence of the institution established for the law for administering the fund. What is the transitional arrangement for the collection, management, and administration of the same? And that's the fund. Answer: Cabinet conclusion number 111 or 111 provides for the Department of Public Administration. Let me take that again because you need to hear this. Cabinet conclusion, a cabinet conclusion 111 provides for the Department of Public Administration, DPA, to serve as the interim fund administration So all the jump up and the arrogance about the trustees and the funds and how the consolidated fund don't have no fund. According to the Prime Minister, there's no fund, right? And the trustees, nothing so. So they start to take the workers' money and they give it to a department within the public service under a cabinet conclusion, right? The contributions deducted from January the 1st, 2025 are being deposited into a special account established for this purpose. DPA, please point me to the act that gives the cabinet the authority to give the Department of Public Administration the authority to collect funds on behalf of the workers. Again, a cabinet conclusion is not a law. Our money is removed from the consolidated fund, our property, my property, your property, our property. According to law, it's our property, and put into a fund that you say you've placed in the hands of a department. Because remember, there are things you said you're going to pay from the consolidated fund for the first 5 years, I think, towards this fund, right? And then you said, was it in question 3 or so, that you're not responsible for it? There's no liability on central government. Are you serious? You are responsible. So I'm working with you. You are my boss. You deduct my money from my salary, put it in the fund that you are not responsible for. There's no liability on you. Is it that the fund is delinked from the government? Isn't that unconstitutional? Well, why am I asking? You all don't bother with the Constitution. Removing monies from the consolidated fund and putting it in the hands of DPA. Isn't that unconstitutional? What is definitely unconstitutional is this SUSU scheme you've created. So says Attorney at Law Jimmy Bristol, QC, and learned attorney Catcherton Hood, former AG. Let's hear learned attorney Catcherton Hood.
Give the NMP government credit was that we are not going to appeal the judgment. Let us find a way to pay the pension. That is a fact. Now, I had conversation with Mr. Bristol Casey last night. He has written a letter to the Attorney General saying that this bill, which they passed today, is unconstitutional. And I agree with him. We are back to square one. As Mrs. Pierce says, we are back to a Pension Disqualification Act. Because in effect, what this act is saying is this: if you come into the service after this act is passed, you have no right to a pension under the Constitution. And that is the bottom line. It is a Pension Disqualification Act because it purports to say that after this bill is passed, you're only entitled to a pension if you pay money into a fund. The Constitution says if you work in any of the established positions in the public service, you're entitled to a pension that is set out in the laws. So the only way that bill can really be effective is if that bill replaces the 1958 pension scheme. And the bill doesn't purport to do that at all. I would urge the government to read very carefully read the last judgment. The question is whether the bill that is submitted and was passed in the lower house today is effective to replace the government pension that's guaranteed under the Constitution in Section 92. That is the issue. I repeat, what was passed today has made no reference to the 1958 pension. The court ruling is that right now, the 1958 pension still subsists. So the issue is whether or not the bill that was passed today meets the constitutional test, whether it can replace the 1958 Act. And recall, that bill makes no reference to the 1958 Act, which is the act that is in place. The bill did not try to revoke the 58 Act at all. The bill seeks to revoke Section 47 of the NIS Act. So that is the question that needs to be answered. Mr. Bristol's view, and I share his view, I repeat, is that this bill contravenes the provisions of the Constitution of Grenada as it is now. And it is going to be put to the court again, as Mrs. Pierce said. Buckle up. We'll be going back to court, I believe, because the unions are now consulting with the lawyers, and I suspect the government will have to answer a case. So it's just a first round.
Don't let it die. Don't let it die. You know, they say Grenadians are 8 days wonder. Don't let it die. It would affect workers to come for years to come, as a matter of fact. Question: is it true the permanent secretary in DPA now owns several businesses, and that the latest being a trucking company? Why not? From captain to crook. Follow the money, people. Follow the money. Question: Prime Minister, we await the results of the investigation involving Mr. William Batiste and Miss Cindy Henry and the fraud and corruption that's taken place in the National Lottery Authority. Mr. William Batiste being the chairman of the board, and Miss Cindy Henry, the managing director of the authority. The two signatories on checks for that authority. And the writing of checks to Mr. William Batiste in his name, in his company's name, amounting to hundreds of thousands of dollars, that Mr. William Batiste was fired for with immediate effect after the former minister investigated and saw the corruption that was taking place there. You, Prime Minister, asked the minister, Minister Lacrette, to rescind his letter, and instead you fired the minister, and your friend, your colleague, your nation builder is still sitting. As a matter of fact, his position was renewed recently as chairman of the board of directors of the National Lottery Authority, as he continued to rape the resources of that authority. Prime Minister, we also await the findings of the allegations of the bribery. I'm not saying it's allegations, because I know it's true. But it had to do that here to say that. Because if you not admitting it, then for you it's allegations and you're supposed to investigate it. So your findings of my allegations of the bribery that took place between your minister for MIT, Minister Andy Williams, and the contractor of CCCCI, the company that's now doing the Cliff Road project. Money for contract, in other words. $100,000 cash and $15,000 towards renovations for his pickup truck. We're still waiting. We will not let it go. We will not let it go. Prime Minister, the people would like an update on the meeting you had with the Secretary of State of the White House in the USA, Marco Rubio. Where are we with the tariff situation? I mean, you leave, you go to a meeting, something as important as that, you come back, crickets. We hear nothing of what happened. What did Grenada bargain with? Who bargained for Grenada, really? And what did we use to bargain? I mean, we're in a very strategic position in the Caribbean. Tell us something. Tell us what happened. Is it true, Prime Minister, that members of your cabinet and their surrogates, the persons working out of their constituency offices, are giving out monies to constituents, $500, monies and gifts of household appliances, fridge, stove, what you want? Tell us what you want in exchange for votes. Is it true? I mean, are we close? I don't even know if we're close, but the point is, they start sharing out monies already. Or it is alleged, I should say. Gotta be careful. Folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Simon Says. It's always a pleasure conversing with you, trying to keep them honest. Thank you for viewing yet another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. See you next week, same time, same place. And remember, a better Grenada is possible.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.